Hello and welcome to Red Read. Today I want to share some thoughts on Nikos Kazantzakis' 1946 novel, Zorba the Greek. This is probably his most popular novel, although I'd maybe make an argument that The Last Temptation is up there considering the Scorsese adaptation, but even if people haven't read the book or if they haven't seen the 1952 movie, you have almost certainly heard the song because it is such an iconic honorary Greek national anthem that any Greek event that has a sound system is almost destined to play this song at some point. So yeah, the novel, however, is based on the author's own experiences of meeting a man who was actually named Zorba, although in real life his name was Yorgos Zorba, and they met in the Peloponnese in the 1920s. They worked together in a mine and then they sort of went their separate ways. And the novel is pretty much the interaction of these two characters. So we have our main narrator, who is kind of unnamed, I believe, but is so basically just Kazantzakis that I will refer to that character as Kazantzakis if I have to. And then we have Zorba, whose first name has been changed to Alexis in the book. And so, but I will try and just say Zorba and Kazantzakis for the purposes of describing the characters. And the book is not very plot heavy. Yes, they are working in a mine and they have things that they're trying to make money, but really it is just an excuse for these characters to be living together and kind of seeing how their two different characteristics or their different personalities interact. So our main Kazantzakis character is a bookworm. He's very well read and erudite, and he has studied Buddhism, which real Kazantzakis also did in Vienna, I believe. But he's not fulfilled. He, like all of the books, haven't given him the answers that he needs to feel a sense of fulfillment. And what happens is that in a kind of fun, intertextual or literary allusion way, he's sitting in a bar and he is reading Dante, and Zorba the Greek manifests for him in the same way that Virgil does, and is essentially going to act as a guide for the remainder of the book. There are I would say that my overall feelings of Zorba the Greek are actually pretty conflicted. On the one hand, I actually like Kazantzakis' writing, even though I know that he was sort of criticized for it being a bit florid. I like it, and I especially like that he describes sort of mundane environments and things in a very sort of beautiful way. And I usually would like the concept of a story that is just two characters together in sort of dialogue and just playing off each other. But my conflict came from the fact that this book was written and it came out about, I think, 4 years after real life Zorba passed away. And so I think that Kazantzakis was maybe conflicted in terms of wanting to make a book that was an accurate representation of this friend that he actually really loved, and but then there are times when it suffers as a novel. And the main thing that I got is that there are so many interesting ideas and perspectives that the narrator has, and because it is narrated in the first person, and that's another interesting thing I'll come back to, this sort of change perspective. But it is narrated in the first person, but he will have some really kind of elegant and interesting, both intellectual and aesthetic insights where I'm like, I so resonate with this main character. But then Zorba will come in being very different, and it could have been a back and forth, but really, Kazantzakis just worships Zorba the Greek, and so it doesn't feel like Zorba has a whole lot of character development, and I think that is at the detriment of it just being a novel. However, if that's how it really happened, then Kazantzakis might have been conflicted because he's writing this book as a memorial to his friend, and so he needs to be accurate, and it's the same conflict that I felt with Christopher Isherwood's Goodbye to Berlin, where I felt like there were times where he just described the situation probably as it actually was or actually happened, but it may be sort of deflated in a literary or a novel perspective. But yeah, it's kind of an unsolvable problem. And I will also say that on the one hand, it is a sign of the times, maybe, asterisks, but there are a lot of really just outright, unequivocally sexist passages from Zorba the Greek that Zorba the character and Zorba the Greek that are really hard to get through. Like, you really have to just, if you want to continue, you really have to just scoff and move it along. And the reason why I said, like asterisks vis-a-vis sign of the times, it comes back to me being kind of aggravated and conflicted with the way this story is set up, because the main character, Kazantzakis, has more progressive ideals about women and men and their relationship, but pretty much gets shut down by Zorba and doesn't really fight back because, again, he worships Zorba. And it's just like, if it was just one of those times where it's normally a very normal book, but because of when it was written, you just come across a couple of cases of the N-word and you're like, oh, that's really unsavory, but it's just a sign of the times. It's not exactly like that, because we have another character right here who's got more progressive ideals but doesn't kind of get into a dialogue and try to change it. But anyway, that is sort of all I wanted to talk about before I get into examples. So now I'll just start reading. I do want to give some examples of Kazantzakis' writing because, again, I think he does a great job of describing the natural environment in a really beautiful way. But yeah, I'll just start sifting through now to find some things, find some examples, and see if I can springboard off that into new topics for conversation. And so yeah, here's an example where he's talking about how fortunate he is to sail the Aegean Sea in Greece. And Kazantzakis, narrator, writes, "Many are the joys of this world, women, fruit, ideas, but to cleave that sea in the gentle autumnal season, murmuring the name of each islet, is to my mind the joy most apt to transport the heart of man into paradise. Nowhere else can one pass so easily and serenely from reality to dream. The frontiers dwindle, and from the masts of the most ancient ships spring branches and fruits. It is as if here in Greece, necessity is the mother of miracles." And it's a little bit patriotic, I guess, but having gone to the Cretan islands and seen some of the really beautiful rock beaches, it's I can just see you can really it is a very picturesque place that I think Kazantzakis does a nice job describing. And so there are some ideas. I think maybe one of the things that appeals to Zorba the Greek and why we're not really able to completely write him off, he's not a nationalist or patriotic in any sense. And here we're in a dialogue about talking about why people need to die and suffer in war in order for things to grow. So, and then, so this is first Kazantzakis talking. "How does a plant sprout and grow into a flower on manure and muck? Say to yourself, Zorba, that the manure and muck is man and the flower liberty. But the seed," cried Zorba, striking his fist on the table. For a plant to sprout there must be a seed. Who's put such a seed in our entrails? And why doesn't this seed produce flowers from kindness and honesty? Why must it have blood and filth?" I shook my head. "I don't know," I said. "Who does?" "No one." And so, yeah, there are kind of some nice paragraphs. While I'm here, I do want to. So this hasn't come up now, but I've just remembered it. I do want to talk about how, I don't know if this is a flaw, but I feel like there are definitely some times when, despite being first person, Kazantzakis kind of accidentally slips into omnipotent third person and starts to narrate the inner thoughts and ideals of a of other characters like Zorba and like Dame Hortense or Zorba's Bubelina in a way that I will admit did take me out of it. I kind of felt like, maybe if I was going to give the benefit of the doubt, I would say that it is Kazantzakis thinking back and kind of being detached in that moment and remembering these characters, but the fact that it's still sort of written in the first person, I don't know, it did come across as a little bit jarring when there are these like accidental third person perspectives. This is one of those ways where you get some of the kind of backhanded compliments to women that I think might have seemed charming back then, but you kind of read now and it's a little bit like, I'll just read this. This is, again, actually an example of what I was just talking about, of Kazantzakis describing Zorba in a weird sort of third-person way. Zorba meeting and perceiving his Bubelina. It was certainly not this mummified and outrageously painted old woman he was seeing before him, but the entire female species, as it was his custom to call women. The individual disappeared, the features were obliterated, whether young or senile, beautiful or ugly. Those were mere unimportant variations. Behind each woman rises the austere, sacred, and mysterious face of Aphrodite. Kind of backhanded, and I think not exactly the way that we would go about describing the holistic beauty of women nowadays, but yeah, just an example from this book. This is just a clear example of what sort of fueled my conflict, where pretty early on it doesn't, the book is not allowed to be an honest tug of war between these two characters. On page 67, Zorba is talking to Kazantzakis, and he was saying, what were we saying the day before yesterday, boss? You were saying you wanted to open the people's eyes. Alright, just go and open old Uncle Anagnosti's eyes for him. Anagnosti I always read as agnostic, but anyway. You saw how his wife had to behave before him, waiting for his orders like a dog begging. Just go now and teach them that women have equal rights with men, and that it's cruel to eat a piece of the pig while the pig's still raw and groaning in front of you, and that it's simple lunacy to give thanks to God because he's got everything while you're starving to death. What good will that poor devil Anagnosti get out of all your explanatory humbug? You'd only cause him a lot of bother. And what did old Mother Anagnosti get out of it? The fat would be in the fire, family rows would start, the hen would want to be cock. The couple would just have a good set to and make their feathers fly. Let people be, boss. Don't open their eyes. And supposing you did, what did they see? Their misery. Leave their eyes closed, boss, and let them go on dreaming. Which again, it's like, it's a lot easier to let people go on dreaming when men are able to oppress women, but yeah. And you happen to be a man saying that. One of the things I do like as well, maybe another progressive thing, is that the book does help to kind of confront and talk about male on male friendship intimacy. And so one of the ways that is explored is that Kazantzakis is writing letters to his friend who is fighting in the war, and he writes this. After having written a whole long letter, this is the end of it. But why am I writing this to you? To let you see that I have forgotten none of the moments we have lived together, and also to have an opportunity of expressing what, because of our good or bad habit of curbing our feelings, I can never reveal to you when we are together. Now that you are no longer before me and cannot see my face, and now that I run no risk of appearing soft or ridiculous, I can tell you I love you very deeply. And yeah, it's a very heartwarming thing to read, and it's just like, It is just one of those things where it's like, it's so close to being a really forward-thinking novel, but you still have a couple of these like roadblocks. And I just have to say it, like, I know that I said the book is not very plot heavy, but there is a development in the town in which they're staying, where there is a widow who is there, and the widow has this sort of kind of outcast. They kind of think about her like she's a witch, and there is this just absolutely bananas sequence where, because the widow like refused the advances of one of the like townspeople, they essentially went to riot and they like attacked her, and like, big spoiler alert, but she got fucking beheaded. Like, her head got cut off, and I was just like gobsmacked that this happened. And again, I don't know if this is something that really happened and Kazantzakis' writer is just like trying to accurately describe it, but it was just bananas. And the even worse thing is that, like, less than 5 pages later, the only way to psychologically deal with it is that the narrator, like, decides that it was the right thing that needed to happen. And it is just like, what am I reading? Like, come on, how can I take other things seriously when there is just this like absolutely absurd stuff going on? But in any case, that's kind of all I want to talk about. There are still some plot things. There's Father Zaharia, who is sort of possessed in a sense by the devil, but it's kind of used as a way to criticize some of the other workings of priests that are in a monastery, but that I will leave. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about with Zorba the Greek. Like I said, I came away from it really conflicted. The storyline is kind of absurd, and even though there are some really great moments and some extracts, again, I still took like quite a decent number of annotations. I think maybe the book, again, I don't want to say it's bad, or I don't want to say the book suffered. I would just say I was conflicted on the fact that there's this very one-sided relationship where it could have been like two characters feeding and like an interplay between the two, but it's very much like a mentor, teach me the ways of existence, Zorba. And yeah, but I still liked Kazantzakis' writing enough that I am interested in reading some of his other things, and I do have The Last Temptation of Christ that I will read. But yeah, let me know what you thought of Zorba the Greek. I know that there are some people for whom it was like the unsavory elements were bad enough that it just kind of ruined the whole thing. But and I know that there are other people who talk about the book with just like raving 5-star reviews and don't even sort of mention it. So yeah, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.